Hi, good afternoon. It is a pleasure and delight for me to be engaging with you despite the current state of the world where we are all physically distant and learning lessons in living apart together. Welcome to this mediated conversation where we mix real time with screen time. And as we get trapped in these narrow rectangles of our digital devices, we get together to talk about ideas of truth, or more precisely, in my case, the ideas of fakeness. And I feel compelled to begin with a straightforward warning. I think right now, as you are listening to me, there's a possibility that you are being cheated because you have no idea of figuring out whether the Nishant Shah that you came to listen to is the Nishant Shah that you are listening to right now. For all you know, I could be fake, right? The final promise of deep fake technologies that have figured out a believable human speaker who could be simulated to offer machine lies as human truths. Even if there was some way of ensuring that I am not a machine, surely you can't be sure that I am the Nishant that was promised or who is the author of the upcoming book really fake. At most, you can know that I am a Nishant Shah. You can do a Google search, and even then the verification is going to be iffy. So if you do believe that I am human, and I am indeed the Nishant that was supposed to be here, you still have no way of knowing that what I'm offering to you in my talk today is actually the truth. It's highly possible you will have to admit that when I talk about some personal experiences and histories in the course of this talk, I might be just lying through my teeth. If you believe what I'm saying, no matter how untruthful I might be, then it's not fake. So this is what I'm proposing for us right now, that I cannot guarantee that everything I say today is the fact, but I know it to be the truth. And in this valley between not definitely the fact, but most certainly the truth, resides our conversations around fakeness. That it is fake only if it fails to fool you. Fakeness apparently is not in what I say, but in how you believe in it. And if we take this for a certainty, then welcome to the world of not knowing who we are, where we are going, and how we will know when we get there, where we are supposed to be. Now, there is something very powerful in this claiming, naming, framing, and declaration of fakeness, because to recognize things as fake is to recognize that fakeness is not just a permanent state of being, but in fact is comprised of multiple moving in and out of truthiness, that essential quality of the truth. I'm going to propose that fakeness, in fact, can be unstuck. If you collapse the context of time, space, distance, duration, reception, circulation, if you go far away or deep enough, fakeness can be engineered as the truth. Facts can be questioned as uncertain, and truth can be hidden under familiarity. Let me begin with a more concrete example of how this fakeness is something we move in and out of by looking at the proliferation of a particular hashtag that's quite popular on social media platforms. And I'm talking about the hashtag #NoHomo. The hashtag #NoHomo is a strange one. It generally follows up on what could be seen as homoerotic or homo-curious expressions of love, affection, friendship, or intimacy between men. With its origins in the misogynist and the hyper-masculine rap cultures, where ferocious heterosexual maleness has to be overplayed repeatedly, the no homo phrase made its appearances to insist that despite what you might see in this musical, lyrical, or visual representation, homosexuality is not intended. And even more so, readings of homosexuality will not be tolerated. In the context of India, where until a few years ago homosexuality was still a crime, and it continues to be a huge social and cultural taboo, queer and gay expressions still find their biggest platforms on social media and user-generated websites. And there is one entire subgenre of videos called Kand videos. Kand is the Hindi word for fun and also can be translated as scandal. And it is used to define a subgenre of user-generated videos on popular video streaming websites like YouTube. So canned videos include a wide range of user-generated videos like pornography between consulting adults, spy cams that capture surreptitious encounters, sting operations that seek to provide testimonies of promiscuity, anonymous cameras that insinuate themselves into private spaces, exposing and leaking the people in it, and also often self-recorded videos of people performing to popular Bollywood tunes, and groups of young men and women, generally gender separated, having a bit of fun in shared living spaces. In all these types, sexual activity and the body are central to defining the core of the canned video. However, despite the sexual, bodily, physical intimacy exchange and activities, canned videos are continuously marked with the hashtag #NoHomo. So in the comment section, if you ever go to these canned videos, there are people who come and spew abuse at these men having fun for being gay, for being effeminate, for engaging in what they think is unnatural activity, and for being a stain on Indian societies. And then there are viewers who consume these canned videos as the only local expression of queer Indian bodies, desire, and intimacy. So it's a very strange field where the homophobic trolls and the closeted queer men both identify the homoeroticism and the desire that is embedded in these videos. However, these homosexual identifications are continuously challenged by the people in the videos. They are derided, flagged as inappropriate, abused and threatened, or faced with the tag #NoHomo, which appears almost compulsively. The performers themselves take up the defensive #NoHomo tone in their comments or descriptions of the video. Now, it is a very bizarre assertion of fakeness. It says that this video, which shows men in scantily clad clothes, touching, rubbing, dancing, and sometimes making out with each other in showers, in the pool, in the gym, that they are expressing physical connections, but they refuse to be read as homosexual. If you call them homosexual or read homoerotic desire in it, then you are proliferating fake news. The truth of the video does not lie in its content or in its reception, but in its intention. These particular ideas of moving in and out of fakeness, right? In and out of gay, not gay, homo, no homo debates is perhaps critical to understand how the current universe of fakeness is being constructed. And for the rest of my talk today, I hope to offer 3 specific theses and how fakeness needs to be stuck and unstuck, and how these theses are part human, part technological, part social, and part speculative. So the first mechanism of fakeness by which it can be unstuck has to be thought through the fact that fakeness is an attribute that is continuously under construction, right? And this is happening by creating a condition of what we call simultaneous plenty and scarcity. On the one hand, the informational societies that we live in tell us that there is an abundance of information. So much information that in fact we will never be able to believe, remember, or even process all the information that surrounds us. That plenty of information necessarily means that there will always be more information than you experienced, but you could not sense it. There will be information that surrounds you without you knowing of it. There will be information that is stored, hoarded, counted, and circulated, and you will have almost no control over it because you do not have the capacity to hold it anymore. And because of this plenty, you will then, of course, not be able to make a decision because not all of this information is truthful. A large part of this information is fake, and you do not have the capacity to verify and process it. So your own senses and decisions for truth-telling and truth-sensing are now diminished. Fakeness, or the truthiness, which were human functions, thus become technological functions. Your experience, interpretation, and understanding of this informationality will be negated by the intention that is put upon the information. You might see a canned video, You might appreciate it as an expression of queer desire. But if the hashtag says no homo, you're going to have to suspend your own interpretation and experience and agree that this is indeed not queer. So it's a very strange paradox that the more information you have, the more you will lose your ability to believe in it. It's no wonder then that you will be a paranoid person, because the paranoia is not about the loss of information, but our ability to actually remember, recall, hold, and own the information with which we have an intimate and a personal relationship. So fakeness becomes unstuck because these fake objects are continuously fooling us, convincing us that the message that they come with supersedes the knowledge of our own senses. What we see as the fact might not necessarily be the truth. The second proposition I want to make for you about why fakeness thrives in digital cultures is because something strange has happened to time. It is good to recognize that at its very heart, the computer is a counting device. It's an obsessive regime of time organization and management to such an extent where, remember at the turn of the millennia when we were changing centuries, we were afraid that programming languages that were not able to count for the date storage and the date change would lead to the complete devolution of our civilization. Because computation practices are so integrally time organization practices, it does mean that time is seen as a resource that is both open to manipulation and subject to reorganization. Time in computation is not something to be experienced, remembered, or sensed, but to be counted, arranged, and organized. This essentially means that time, which was often a measure of intensity, has now become a measure of scale. And take the example of some of the most ardent discussions around sexual harassment and call-out cultures that we have been experiencing over the last few years, particularly around the hashtag #MeToo. In India, again, the geography that I'm the most familiar with, in the wake of the MeToo movement, there appeared a list called LOSHA, a list of sexual harassers in academia, which was compiled by a graduate student, Raya Sarkar, and created out of first-hand accounts of survivors who were essentially choosing to remain anonymous while narrating their experience. Like all digital lists, this was not set in stone, but poised for expansion, populated as more stories kept on coming out. As the list gathered attention and circulation, the number of entries in the list grew. By November 2017, the list had the names of 72 male academics in India, many of which named prominent, highly influential, and powerful academics. Many of them, to the dismay of our larger community, had talked the talk of social justice, gender equality, and safe spaces in their academic careers. So among many other critiques, LOSHA was read as fake, not because it did not sound credible, right? It sounded like this could have happened and it's truthful, but because the information that it produced was without a timestamp. The stories of the survivors were not necessarily present and current. Some of it had happened in institutional spaces that have gone and in relationships which can no longer be remembered. Some of it referred to incidents which, retrospectively speaking, were not illegal per se at the time that it happened, but which, with hindsight, signaled a legacy of structural sexual harassment in the country and in academia. The survivor was not just one individual asking for justice, but a collective, and hence the list could only be seen as symptomatic without the onus of providing proof and facts and evidences that are impossible to get when the incidents are old and without credible witnesses and paper trails. I find the LOSHA survival stories really interesting because they come without the tyranny of a timestamp, and they are allowed to enter a new temporal relationship with the perpetrators, a relationship that is dated, which is about reorganizing a different kind of time, and which allows then for a confrontation that follows the temporal experience of people who speak out. Because, even before the viral attention economy sprouted, fakeness was always considered a condition of time. Over time, truth becomes blurry, hollow, suspect, and fake. What we forgot was lost. What was lost could not always be retrieved. When it could no longer be retrieved, the event itself lost its legitimacy. The testimony became hollow. And if we continued to believe in it, we were suddenly entering into fakeness, a weird condition where we couldn't know it for a fact, couldn't prove it as truth, but knew that it was true. And of course, the immediate corollary to this are the people who we think are nuts, right? Like anti-vaxxers, flat earthers, or Trump supporters, who are simultaneously asking to stop the count and count the vote, because both of them were about a projection into the future and choosing the future that they liked. So this particular moment from last week where they were really asking to stop the count and count that vote as both legitimate ways by which the future is going to be organized is a clear example of how fakeness can be stuck or unstuck, and we keep on moving in and out of it. This brings me to my conclusion and also my third thesis on why fakeness is so difficult to understand. It's because of the difference between verification of facts and understanding of truth. Our digital technologies are constantly reliant on verification of facts. Give a large data set to an algorithm parsing it, and it will show you where the errors are, where the unverified information is, and where the unauthenticated users are. In fact, in the world of big data, algorithms are the only ways by which this data verification can happen. However, introduce an error in the data set, and we are all set for fun, or at least a little bit of drama. Take, for example, two images that I want to share with you. One is the universal sign for okay, and the other is from a cartoon series about a green chilled out frog. However, in 2019, in those pre-COVID days when we could think about anything beyond infections and contagion, both of these images got immediately classified as expressions of hate speech online. With the OK sign, it began as a hoax, like many things do, in the bizarre lands of 4chan. An anonymous user wanted to prank the liberals and the leftists by co-opting the OK sign, making them believe that it is a secret coded gesture for what they call the OKKK white supremacists. The prank got traction. Hundreds of thousands of memes and fake information flooded social media. People started using that as a secret gesture to signal something sinister. In about 3 months, this fake sign started getting used by neo-Nazi associations in the US and the rest of the world. On the internet, the sign became a real thing, something that right-wing white supremacists started adding to their posts. A Trump supporter used that sign famously in one of his rallies. And thus, the contamination of a data set by people who willfully produced information that was verifiable but untrue managed to produce an entire new symbol of racist politics. And more interestingly, the algorithms which were trying to flag these kinds of expressions of hate speech started identifying and reinforcing that the sign for OK is in fact a sign for white supremacists. In another event, Pepe the Frog, who famously became a meme saying, "Just chill out, man," underwent a similar treatment, whereas an ironical gesture, one user photoshopped him in front of a concentration camp, spewing anti-Semitic slogans. So Pepe, who was otherwise just a children's cartoon, got caught up in people objecting to this usage and people who got their kicks out of trolling the people who were offended. It took less than 3 months where an ironic meme eventually became such a widespread symbol of white supremacy that the original intention and content of Pepe got immediately overridden by the new truth that has been ascribed to him, especially because white supremacists continue to use Pepe's green face in their Twitter and Instagram bios and profiles to identify themselves to each other. In both these instances, the OK and the Pepe supremacy are lessons of how new content gets measured differently at time and scale change. The capacity to pin meaning to an object, not because of its original intention, but the sheer scale of repetition weight of hyperlinking, and the correlations caused by algorithms that can know the fact but not the truth, and thus could be fooled into creating these new meanings, is an essential condition of fakeness that we are living through. Or to make it very, very simple, we have to start realizing that the new conditions of fakeness are not being constructed only by human users, but human users who are fooling algorithms and technological softwares into producing new kinds of realities because they are unable to verify the difference between intention and execution. So, where do we go from here? Right? What do we do when faced with the fact that we can not recognize fakeness unless it is badly done? That most of the time, fakeness that appeals to our human emotions, our core belief, our view of the world passes through easily because it fools us into believing that it is in fact true. Now, I don't have immediate solutions or technological hacks into this, but I do have an approach. And that approach is about changing the axis through which we approach the notion of the human. Right now, the digital technologies of our future are presented to us as more than human. We are told that these technologies, because they are rational and dependent on logic and infallible in nature, are better, stronger, more robust than human beings. They store information, they remember it, they query and organize it across time and scale, and hence they are just more reliable. In some strange ways, these technologies are given to us as aspirational in nature. We must try and be like them. They are cleaner and hence more desirable, and they are the goals that we must measure up to. This needs to change. Digital technologies are measures, not things we measure up to. We do not have to become like machines to escape fakeness because, as I have tried to explain, machines in fact create and populate the condition of fakeness. We just need to recognize that there are machine facts and that there are human truths, and often these might coincide, but staying between them and working through them is where our collective futures are going to lie. So I'm going to stop this conversation here right now. And thank you very much for your time and attention. And I hope that this has been an interesting input. We are going to move this into now a new digital venue where it's going to be hopefully more interactive and I can get more questions and answers and conversations. So you can join us at the Nürnberg Digital Think Tank, which you find in the Expo section on the Hopin. And I will see you there with some questions, some ideas and conversations. Thank you very much.